What happens when you humiliate the one person who never stopped choosing you? I thought it was harmless. One dance, one song, one spark of nostalgia. But the smile my husband gave me before he walked out wasn't forgiveness. It was goodbye. It was supposed to be perfect, the kind of anniversary party people talked about for weeks. I planned every detail myself, down to the golden table runners and the champagne tower that would sparkle just right under the lights. 10 years of marriage deserved a show, and I wanted everyone to see how beautiful we still looked together. I thought that would prove something, maybe to them, maybe to me. Ethan didn't care about parties. He never did. He said things like, "I'd rather have dinner at home," or, "We don't need an audience to love each other." But I wanted the audience. I wanted to feel adored, admired, seen. That night I told him, "Let me handle everything. Just smile and show up." He nodded, because that's what he always did. Quiet, polite, too trusting for his own good. The hall shimmered. Everyone we knew was there. Family, friends, people from my work. Even Julian, my ex. It had been years since I'd seen him, but we'd stayed in touch online, harmlessly. He messaged that he was in town and joked he might crash the party. I said, "Why not? You can see what you missed." I told Ethan later, as if it didn't matter. He'd smiled faintly and said, "If that makes you happy." It did make me happy. Until it didn't. When Julian walked in, he looked exactly the same. The musician charm, the easy grin, the way everyone's attention tilted toward him. My friends noticed, whispering, giggling. Someone said, "You two were wild back in the day." I laughed and said, "I upgraded." Ethan just smiled politely from the corner, holding his glass like he was invisible. I saw it and told myself he was fine. He always said he didn't get jealous. Dinner went well enough. The band played softly. The champagne poured endlessly. I floated through conversations, soaking in the compliments about the decor, my dress, our marriage. It felt like proof that I'd done everything right. Then Julian made a toast, bold, slightly tipsy, typical of him. He said, "To old songs, and the people who never forget them." Everyone laughed. I did too. And then the band began to play our song, the one Julian and I had danced to years ago. I don't know what made me do it, the wine, the eyes watching, the need to feel powerful. But I turned to him and said, "Guess we owe them a show." He grinned, and before I could think twice, we were on the dance floor. It started as a joke. It always does. The lights caught us perfectly. People clapped, phones came out, and I laughed louder to hide my nerves. Julian twirled me, said quietly, "Still the best partner I ever had." I smiled too brightly and said, "Don't let my husband hear you." When I glanced at Ethan, he was watching. Not angry, not embarrassed, just still. The song ended. Everyone applauded. I took a bow, kissed Ethan on the cheek when I walked past him, whispering, "Don't look so serious." He smiled then, a small, gentle smile I didn't understand. He set down his drink, straightened his jacket, and walked out of the hall. People laughed, thinking it was part of the moment. I laughed too, but my throat was tight. He didn't come back. Not after the next song, not after the cake, not even after everyone left and the lights were dimmed. That was the night everything cracked, and I was still dancing when it did. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The night started like a dream I'd built for myself. The hall was glowing with gold and silver lights, 100 tiny candles reflecting off crystal glasses. Everyone I knew was there, family, co-workers, friends, all dressed in their best, saying how lucky Ethan and I were to have lasted 10 years. I made sure they said it. I wanted them to see what a perfect marriage looked like, even if I had to choreograph every second. Ethan stood beside me, as always, quiet and graceful. He looked handsome in his black suit, the same one he wore when we got engaged. When people complimented him, he smiled politely, then stepped aside to let me take the attention. That was the thing about him. He never needed to be seen. Sometimes I hated that about him. Sometimes I envied it. Julian arrived halfway through dinner. My heart jumped when I saw him at the door, tall and casual, holding a small bouquet of red roses. I'd told him to stop by, just for fun, to show there were no hard feelings. It was harmless, or that's what I told myself. He hugged me, whispered that I looked stunning, and everyone at our table saw it. The energy shifted immediately. I could feel the eyes on us. Clara laughed first. "Leora, you didn't tell us he was coming," she said, nudging me. I smiled, pretending it was a surprise. Ethan looked up from his plate, gave a polite nod, and said, "Glad you could make it, Julian." His tone was calm, polite, too polite. I tried to break the tension with a joke. "Don't worry, honey," I said to Ethan. "I'm not trading up tonight." The table laughed. He didn't. Julian stayed near me through the evening, talking, teasing, pulling me back into old memories. I didn't stop him. It felt thrilling in a way to have someone look at me like that again. Ethan was always steady, predictable. Julian had always been the opposite, reckless, magnetic. I told myself I was just entertaining the guests, being the charming hostess. When the band started playing slow songs, I noticed the first notes of our song, mine and Julian's, not Ethan's and mine. My chest tightened. I turned to Julian and said lightly, "Oh no, they still remember this one." He grinned and offered his hand. "Then we should remind them why." For a moment, I hesitated. I looked at Ethan. He was standing with his mother, talking quietly, not watching, or maybe pretending not to. I told myself it would be funny. Just a dance, nothing more. So I took Julian's hand and let him lead me to the floor. The music was soft, familiar. The crowd clapped, encouraging us. Julian's hand rested on my back, warm, steady. He said under his breath, "You haven't changed." I laughed too loudly. "Neither have you." The cameras flashed. People cheered. It was perfect, until I turned and saw Ethan standing near the bar, his face calm, unreadable. I tried to meet his eyes, to make him part of the joke. He didn't move. He just watched. And for the first time, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not guilt, but unease. The song ended, the applause started, and I bowed dramatically, milking the moment. When I looked back at Ethan, he was smiling faintly. He set down his glass, straightened his jacket, and walked toward the door. At first I thought he was going to the restroom or taking a call, but when the doors closed behind him and didn't open again, I felt the laughter around me fade. Someone whispered, "Did he just leave?" I forced another laugh, said, "He's probably just tired of being the quiet one." But my throat burned. For the rest of the night, I kept looking at the door, waiting for him to come back. He never did. Later, when the lights dimmed and the guests started leaving, Julian asked softly, "You think he's okay?" I smiled tightly. "He's fine. He always is." But even as I said it, I knew he wasn't. And I couldn't admit that neither was I. The next morning, the house felt too quiet. The kind of silence that doesn't wait to be broken. Ethan's shoes were gone from the entryway, his coat too. I stood there staring at the empty hooks, coffee cup trembling in my hand, trying to convince myself it meant nothing. Maybe he'd just left early for work. Maybe he needed space. I told myself not to panic, that he was probably just sulking. He had always been sensitive about public things. But as the hours passed and he didn't text, the unease began to crawl under my skin. I called him once, twice. No answer. I left a cheerful message, pretending nothing was wrong. "Hey, you disappeared last night. Everyone asked about you. Call me when you're done being mysterious." He didn't call back. By noon, I started tidying the kitchen just to have something to do. The leftover cake from the party sat on the counter, half-eaten, the frosting already dry. I threw it out and tried not to think about the way he'd smiled before walking out. It wasn't anger in that smile. It was worse. It was final. When Dana came by to drop off the decorations I'd forgotten, she asked carefully, "Where's Ethan?" I said he'd gone to work early. She looked skeptical. "He looked upset last night." I waved her off. "Oh, please. He's always quiet when people look at him too long. He'll come around." She didn't argue, but she didn't look convinced either. After she left, I scrolled through my phone. The photos from the party were already posted online. People had commented things like, "Couple goals," and "What a perfect night." Someone even tagged a clip of me and Julian dancing. I watched it twice, trying to see what Ethan had seen. To me, it looked harmless. Just two people having fun. But I noticed something else in the background. Ethan, at the edge of the frame, watching. He looked so still it made my chest tighten. I tried to brush it off. I sent him another message. "Don't tell me you're mad over a dance." Then, a minute later, another one. "You know I love you. You're being dramatic." I stared at the screen, waiting for the dots to appear. They never did. That evening, I poured myself a glass of wine and called my friend Clara. She answered on speaker, already laughing. "Girl, you broke the internet last night. That dance was iconic." I tried to laugh with her, but it came out hollow. "Ethan didn't think so," I said. She rolled her eyes. "Please. Men hate seeing their wives have a little fun. He'll come crawling back." Her words soothed me for a while. I liked believing I was still in control. I told her I'd let him cool off for a few days, then act like nothing happened. That always worked before. But the next morning, when I went to make breakfast, I noticed his favorite mug was missing. The one with the chipped handle I kept meaning to throw out. I checked the dishwasher, the cupboards, the sink, nothing. Then I went to the bedroom and saw it. His nightstand drawer was open, empty. The framed picture of us from our honeymoon was gone. I sat down on the edge of the bed, holding my phone in both hands, scrolling through our old messages. The last one from him was from 2 days before the party. It said, "Don't work too hard on the details. The only thing that matters is us." I wanted to text him back right then, but for the first time I didn't know what to say. Every excuse I could think of sounded small, childish. So I put the phone down and stared at the space where the photo had been. That was when I finally admitted it wasn't space he wanted. It was distance, the kind you don't come back from. By Monday, everyone at work had seen the video. I could feel it in the way they looked at me, curious, amused, a little pitying. Someone had uploaded a clip of me and Julian dancing under the caption, "Still got chemistry." I told myself it didn't bother me. I even laughed along when Clara said, "At least people are talking about you." But underneath, I was panicking, because Ethan still hadn't come home. That morning, I called his office pretending to be casual. The secretary hesitated before saying, "He's out for the week, Mrs. Vance." I asked where. She paused, then said softly, "I'm sorry, he didn't say." My stomach dropped. Ethan never missed work. Never. I drove to his mother's house next, rehearsing something charming to say. Ruth opened the door before I could knock twice. She didn't smile. "Leora." Just my name, flat and heavy. I tried to sound cheerful. "Is Ethan here?" She folded her arms. "No, he's not." I said, "Can you tell him to call me?" She looked at me for a long time before answering, "If he wants to." Then she closed the door. On the drive home, I kept telling myself they were overreacting. It was a dance, a single dance. No one left a marriage over that. By the time I pulled into the driveway, I was ready to believe it. I even posted something on social media, a photo of the empty hall after the party, with the caption, "Grateful for a night to remember." It got hundreds of likes. If Ethan saw it, maybe he'd realize how silly he was being. That night, Dana came over with groceries. "You need to eat," she said, setting the bags on the counter. She looked around the house, noticing the spaces where his things used to be. He really took everything? She asked quietly. I shrugged. He's just being dramatic. You know him. She didn't laugh. No, she said. I know you. Her words stung. What's that supposed to mean? I snapped. She hesitated before saying, You humiliated him, Leora. Everyone saw it. You made him a joke at his own anniversary. I rolled my eyes. Oh, please. I was entertaining guests. That's what hosts do. She sighed. It wasn't entertaining. It was cruel. I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that Ethan knew my humor, that he'd forgive me like he always did. But for the first time, I couldn't make myself believe it. I turned away, pretending to check my phone. There was still nothing from him. No calls, no texts. Later that evening, Clara came over, full of energy. You look awful, she said, pouring herself a drink. You need to stop moping. He'll crawl back once he realizes you're not chasing him. I asked, and if he doesn't? She grinned. Then you win. The one who cares less always wins. I wanted to believe her too, so I smiled and said, You're right. Then I opened a bottle of wine and pretended to relax. But when Clara left and the house went silent again, the wine turned sour in my mouth. The silence felt heavier now, pressing on my chest. Before bed, I checked the mailbox. There was a small envelope with no return address, just my name. Inside was a printed photo, a screenshot from the video of me dancing with Julian. On the back, written in Ethan's handwriting, were 4 words. Thank you for showing me. My hands shook. I sat down on the front steps and stared at the message until the porch light flickered out. He wasn't angry. He wasn't begging. He was finished. And somehow that quiet certainty hurt worse than anything else could. I woke the next morning with that photo still sitting on the nightstand, its neat little sentence burning behind my eyes. Thank you for showing me. He'd written it like a man signing off an email. Polite, final, cold. I kept telling myself it didn't mean anything, that he just wanted to scare me. But deep down, I knew Ethan never used words carelessly. I spent the whole morning trying to reach him. I called his phone until it went straight to voicemail. I emailed, texted, even sent a message through Nora's school account, pretending I needed to ask something about paperwork. Nothing. Around noon, I finally got a response. Not from him, but from an unknown number. It was short. Please direct all further contact through counsel. My stomach flipped. Counsel. That word hit harder than anything else. It meant this wasn't about space or pride anymore. It meant lawyers. I drove straight to his office downtown. The receptionist looked startled when she saw me. Is he in? I asked. She glanced toward the hallway. Mr. Vance is working remotely for now. I pressed. Remotely where? She hesitated, then said, I can't share that information. It felt like the ground had dropped out beneath me. I walked back to my car and just sat there, staring through the windshield. Across the street, I noticed the quiet, deliberate rhythm of people going about their lives, no one waiting, no one suspended in this strange silence I'd built. I thought about calling Julian, but even that felt pathetic now. He had texted once after the party, Hope your husband isn't too mad, Lowell, and I hadn't replied. He didn't care. He was just part of the story. When I got home, I started gathering his things, not to pack them, but to remind myself he was still part of this house. His mug, his jacket, his favorite pen on the counter. It all felt staged now, like a set for a life that wasn't happening anymore. That evening, my sister called again. You need to stop chasing him, she said. Let him cool off. I told her he'd already spoken to a lawyer. She went quiet. Then maybe it's not cooling off. Maybe it's over. I wanted to argue, but the words stuck in my throat. I tried to laugh instead. You sound just like him, she said softly. He's not laughing anymore. A few hours later, Ruth called. Hearing his mother's voice sent a wave of guilt I hadn't expected. She said, "Ethan asked me not to get involved, but I think you should know he's serious. He's not angry, Leora. He's resolved." I snapped, "You think I'm the villain here?" Ruth sighed. "No, but you're the one who turned love into performance. He's done being an audience." I hung up before she could say more. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked through every room, pacing, opening and closing drawers just to hear something move. Around midnight, I found a folder on his old desk that I hadn't noticed before. Inside were receipts, photos, copies of messages, printed screenshots of the video, timestamps, even a statement from someone at the venue confirming who had been there. He hadn't just left. He documented everything. I sat on the floor, holding the papers in my lap, staring at the evidence of my own carelessness. My reflection in the window looked unfamiliar, smaller somehow, stripped of all that confidence I wore like armor. For the first time, I realized Ethan wasn't punishing me. He was protecting himself. And no matter what I said or how I tried to twist it, there was no way back from that kind of calm. The legal envelope came 2 days later, thick and heavy, like it contained more than paper. I found it waiting on the porch when I stepped outside for the mail. My name was written neatly on the front, Mrs. Leora Vance. My own name looked foreign in that handwriting. Inside were the first official words that made it real: notice of separation, preliminary division of property, custody recommendation. I sank down on the steps, reading each page as the air around me thickened. There were no accusations, no dramatic threats, just facts. Dates, signatures, clear timelines. It even listed the dance video link as public record evidence. My breath caught. He hadn't yelled, hadn't called me names. He'd just written me out of his life with precision. I called him right away, straight to voicemail. I left a message that started calm and ended shaky. "Ethan, this is crazy. We can talk about this. You can't just file something like this over nothing." I waited an hour, pacing the kitchen. Then my phone buzzed with a single text. "Please contact my attorney for all legal matters. I wish you well." That line, "I wish you well," broke me more than anything. It wasn't angry. It wasn't bitter. It was clean, like he'd already moved on. By noon, I drove to my mother's house. She opened the door, her expression already heavy. "You got the papers," she said quietly. I nodded, waiting for her to tell me he was wrong, that it wasn't fair. Instead, she said, "I told you that night not to test him." I stared at her. "You're taking his side?" She shook her head. "I'm taking the side of consequences, Leora. You thought you were untouchable." I stormed out before she could finish. Back home, I called Clara. She picked up with her usual laugh, but it faded fast when I told her. "He's actually doing it?" she asked. "It's official." I told her about the bank notice attached to the packet, our joint account frozen until division was complete. "I can't even use my own money," I said, my voice trembling. "He's cutting me off." Clara sighed. "It's temporary. He's just trying to scare you. Show him you don't care. Post something. Look happy." Her advice sounded stupid, but I needed something to do. So I did it. I posted an old photo of us smiling on vacation, captioned, "Every love story has its rough chapters." It got hundreds of likes within an hour. For a second, I felt in control again. Like maybe he'd see it and realize I wasn't falling apart. He didn't reply. But someone else did. Dana. My sister commented, "This isn't cute anymore, Leora. Stop pretending." The next morning, a courier delivered another letter. This one wasn't just paperwork. It was a notice of mediation. The first session was already scheduled. I threw the envelope onto the counter, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the glass of water I poured afterward. He hadn't spoken to me once, but somehow he was orchestrating every step of my life from a distance. That night, I called Ruth. I didn't even know why. maybe because I wanted to hear someone defend me. When she answered, her voice was tired. "Leora, you need to stop this," I said. "He's making me look like a monster. He's turning everyone against me." She paused. "He doesn't need to. You did that yourself." I almost dropped the phone. "You always hated me," I spat. She sighed. "I never hated you. I just saw what you were doing, even when Ethan didn't. And now he finally sees it too." I hung up and poured another drink. The kitchen clock ticked too loud. Every sound in the house felt bigger now that I was alone. I kept telling myself I still had time, that this was just paperwork, not the end. But when I opened the folder again, one page caught my eye. Proposed custody schedule. Custody. He wanted to formalize time with our daughter. Weekends alternating, holidays split. The coldness of it made my skin crawl. I had told myself he'd never go that far, that he wouldn't turn something private into legal terms. But he had. And the line at the bottom sealed it. This arrangement prioritizes stability for the minor child and minimizes emotional conflict. It was written by his lawyer, but I could hear his voice in it. Calm, decisive, done. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the living room, staring at the flickering TV screen I'd muted hours ago. My reflection in the glass looked hollow, smaller than I remembered. I kept replaying the dance in my head, the laughter, the applause, the way I'd looked over at him expecting to see affection and found silence instead. By morning, I felt desperate enough to drive to his office again. I parked outside, waiting for hours. Around noon, he came out. For a moment, I thought about running to him. But when he saw me, he didn't even stop. He just said softly, "You should go home, Leora. There's nothing left to talk about." I followed him halfway to his car, words spilling out before I could stop them. "It was just one dance. You can't throw everything away for that." He paused, looked at me, and said, "It wasn't the dance. It was the way you smiled while doing it." Then he got in his car and drove off. I stood there in the parking lot long after he was gone, the sound of traffic roaring in my ears. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a message from his lawyer confirming our mediation date, with a list of documents to bring. One line stood out at the bottom. "Mr. Vance has no further comments at this time. No further comments." That was how he ended it. The same man who used to write me long letters, who once said silence between us felt safe. I went home and sat on the floor beside the stack of papers. The house smelled like dust and cold coffee. I used to think control meant having the last word, but Ethan had taught me something new. Sometimes the last word isn't spoken. It's written, signed, and filed. And once it's filed, you don't get to answer back. The mediation day came sooner than I expected. The sky was gray and heavy, the kind of weather that made everything feel smaller. I stood in front of the mirror that morning for too long, trying to decide what version of myself to bring. The calm one, the guilty one, the charming one. None of them fit. I settled for silence. The law office was quiet, with soft music playing in the background and a bowl of mints at the reception desk. I arrived early, hoping to see him before anyone else did. I wanted a chance to speak, to explain, to make him look at me. But when I asked the receptionist if Ethan was there, she said politely, "Mr. Vance has already been in. He signed his documents and left instructions for counsel to finalize the matter." My heart sank. He wasn't even staying for the meeting. I sat down in the waiting room, the folder of my own papers feeling heavier with every breath. When the lawyer called me in, she smiled kindly, but her eyes were sharp, the kind of professional kindness that keeps distance. "Mrs. Vance," she said, "we'll go over your acknowledgement forms." I nodded, unable to speak. She slid a packet toward me. The first page was a list of agreements: division of assets, property settlement, custody arrangement. My eyes stopped on one line that said, "Both parties agree to refrain from public discussion or disparagement of each other, including online commentary." I felt the heat rise in my face. That line was meant for me, for the posts I'd made trying to look composed. He was even stripping me of my narrative. As she spoke, her tone never changed. Calm, efficient. She asked if I understood the terms. I said yes, though I barely heard her. My eyes drifted down to a smaller envelope clipped to the back of the stack. "He left a statement," she said softly. "For closure." I didn't open it there. I couldn't. Afterward, I signed what needed signing and left through the side door. The air outside felt thin, as if even the world was holding its breath. I sat in my car and finally tore open the envelope. Inside was a single handwritten note on cream paper. Leora. I spent years thinking love meant endurance, that staying through every humiliation was proof of strength. But I finally understand that love without respect is just self-erasure. I hope you find what you were chasing. I'm done chasing what doesn't exist. E. I read it over and over until the words blurred. No anger, no bitterness, just clean honesty. That was what broke me, his ability to stay kind while leaving me behind. That night, I went home to a half-empty house. The closet doors hung open, and the silence between them felt enormous. I poured myself a drink I didn't want and sat on the floor with the letter. I kept thinking about that night. The lights, the applause, the moment I thought I was winning. How stupid it all looked now. The next few days passed like fog. I deleted the old posts, turned off my phone, ignored Clara's messages. She kept saying things like, "You can spin this. Just tell people he overreacted." But I didn't want to spin it anymore. Every story I told had become a trap. Dana came over once, quietly, without judgment. She found me sitting on the living room floor, surrounded by paperwork. "It's final, isn't it?" she asked. I nodded. She sat beside me, and for a while, neither of us spoke. Then she said softly, "You always thought you could talk your way out of anything, but he doesn't live in words anymore." I wanted to hate her for being right, but I couldn't. Instead, I said, "He didn't even yell." She looked at me. He didn't need to. After she left, I went into our bedroom. The walls still smelled faintly like his cologne, that quiet, clean scent I used to tease him for. On the dresser sat the anniversary card I'd bought before the party. I'd written in it, "To the man who always forgives me." The irony made me sick. The following week I received a final letter from the court confirming the dissolution had been processed. One line at the bottom stood out: both parties released from mutual obligations. I stared at it for a long time. Released sounded too kind, too gentle for what it really meant. I spent the next few days cleaning, folding, sorting, pretending to be busy. Every item I touched felt like proof of something I'd ruined: the photo albums, the candle holders, the wedding china still wrapped in paper. When I found our wedding invitation in a drawer, I traced the embossed gold letters with my thumb. Beneath our names, it read, "Together always." That night, I dreamed about the party again. The music, the laughter, Julian's hand on mine, the cameras flashing. But this time, when I looked out at the crowd, no one was there. The hall was empty except for Ethan, standing near the door. I tried to reach him, to say something, anything, but no sound came out. He smiled, the same faint, gentle smile from that night, and turned away. I woke up crying. The next morning I drove to the lake we used to visit on weekends. The air was cold, the water flat and gray. I sat there for a long time, staring at the reflection of the sky and wondering when I'd stopped seeing him as a person and started seeing him as a mirror. I thought being admired would make me whole, but all it did was hollow me out. Before leaving, I took the letter from my pocket, the one he'd written, and read it one last time. Then I folded it carefully, placed it under a rock by the water, and walked away. When I got home, the house greeted me with its usual stillness. No photos, no laughter, no footsteps in the hallway. Just me and the echo of my own choices. I used to think silence was punishment. Now I understand. It's judgment. Ethan never needed revenge. He just needed distance. And he got it. The last thing I remember doing that night was turning off every light and sitting by the window. The city outside glowed faintly, indifferent. Somewhere out there, he was probably reading to our daughter, calm and steady, like always. I whispered his name once, just to hear it in the air. It faded quickly, swallowed by the quiet he'd left behind. That quiet, his final, perfect answer. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.